Meet Onizuka, a full-time gangster and revered Yakuza boss, has plenty of friends and even more enemies. One day, he suddenly decides to leave it all to become a teacher. Why, you ask? So that he can get himself a beautiful younger wife. Join us as we follow this hilariously unaware gangster on an unexpected journey, winning over hearts and forming friendships wherever he goes. It's a story that shows even the once heartless people can live a normal life and develop bonds with the people they get to know, no matter how unbelievable their adventures may be. Yumehara angrily asks for the instant dismissal of Onizuka at the chairperson's office, but the secretary tells her that she isn't present at the moment. As the chairperson is standing outside with Fuyatsuki, she tells her that Onizuka made the wrong person his enemy and got himself into a very problematic mess. Fuyatsuki goes to check up on him and sees that he's freely smoking on the rooftop, as she worryingly tells him that the entire council is after him. He tells her to not worry before she notices his abnormally swollen hand and points it out, but he waves her off and remarks that it's because of his super intense daily workout. But she still seems unconvinced, so he takes a look and shockingly sees that it's grown to twice its size and has become purple. Meanwhile, Yumehara angrily tells the chairwoman to dismiss Onizuka, but she answers that she can't take any such step without speaking to him as well. Just as Fuyatsuki enters and tells them that he's been admitted to the hospital, so Yumehara announces that she'll be holding an official meeting of the PTA council tomorrow where they'll decide whether or not they should fire him. Back at class 3-4, Anko is snidely discussing how Onizuka will be fired tomorrow and is going to pay for making her mother mad. As a boy asks her why he punished them like that, she takes a quick look at Yoshikawa before saying that it's because he's a pervert with a Lolita complex. Later at the staff room, many of the teachers are happily discussing how Onizuka will be fired soon, and pleasingly adds that he was always aware of his true intentions since they first met each other during his interview. As Ryuji and Fuyatsuki later go to the hospital to visit Onizuka, he jokingly wonders how he broke his arm since he faced off against 100 gang members by himself and came out without a scratch. As they near the room, they see that it's locked with chains, so the nurse tells them that even though he's supposed to rest, he always gets up and starts bothering them, which is why they forced him in. They worryingly enter the room but see a rope made by the hospital sheets hanging down from the window before the nurse shockingly exclaims that they're on the 4th floor. The next day, Yumehara gives a long and detailed speech about how a pervert like Onizuka doesn't deserve to be a part of the school when he himself barges in through the door in a monkey costume and refuses to explain it before greeting her by showing off his middle finger. She turns to the mic again and explains that he's unsuited to becoming a teacher, as the committee is about to fire him. Yoshikawa arrives from behind the stage and starts stripping off his clothes without context. Once he's done, he shows Yumehara and the other members the bruises he has on his back and says that he's always bullied by Anko, which is why Onizuka saved him. Refusing to believe it, Yumehara starts assuring the other members that he's playing some sort of trick, but the speaks suddenly blare a conversation between Anko and her friends where they're wickedly discussing how best to bully Yoshikawa next time. Yumehara goes to Anko and hysterically asks if it's real, so she answers that it is and she likes bullying people because she constantly forces her to be a perfect girl, but Onizuka stops her and says that she should stop blaming it on her parents and should instead look for good things more fun than bullying. Later, the chairwoman officially announces that Yumehara has taken back her complaint against Onizuka, and as Fuyatsuki goes to check up on him, she happily sees that he's playing games in his room with Yoshikawa. A boy from class 3-4, Mirai, announces that home visits by teachers start tomorrow, but no matter what, they should not let Onizuka into their homes, and if he somehow manages to get inside, they should harass him until he leaves out of shame. When a pair of guys start discussing how he's taking a normal visit so weirdly, he threateningly confirms whether or not they're going to accept his orders. Later, as he's playing games, Onizuka tells Kikuchi and Yoshikawa that he already meets the parents at the official meetings, so he isn't interested in meeting some 40-year-old woman, but they tell him that Mirai's mother is only 20 and has a great body, so he eagerly goes to wait outside her house for a look, but when she catches him thirstily looking at her photo, Mirai quickly pulls her inside and busies her with cooking dinner while worrying about how now that he's taken a look at her, he'll do anything necessary to find her alone and make out with her. The next day, a pair of girls tell him that they spotted his mother and Onizuka alone at night before one of them remarks that she probably hit it off with him, but he angrily punches the wall and says that he'll never let him have her. Later, in the class, Onizuka officially announces that he won't be visiting their homes since it's just a formality, and tells them to make excuses to their parents. As Mirai goes back home, he sees his mom leaving in fancy clothes and she tells him that she's going for a date and will probably be late, so he should make dinner for himself. Worried, he sneakily follows her and sees that she's meeting Onizuka and going to a noodle bar with him. He angrily follows behind her and sits far from them so that they can't see him, but a while later, a waiter angrily tells him to order something, so when he retorts, his mother and Onizuka spot him. Mirai runs back to his house and tells his friend what happened before wondering if they went to a love hotel and trying to go after them again. But this time, he runs into 3 gang members in an alleyway, so he runs back to his house and sees that his mother is sound asleep alone. The next day, he confronts Onizuka while he's bathing and says that he'll need to beat him if he wants to date his mother, to which he confidently agrees. Later, as they face off against each other in a bike racing game, Mirai takes the lead and arrogantly says he's got a lot of experience in this game, but Onizuka easily outspeeds him and wins before saying that he'll now be going on a date. Mirai stands up and holds his hand out in a gentlemanly gesture, but when Onizuka shakes it, he locks him to a statue with handcuffs and runs away. As Mirai hurriedly rides away on his bike, he encounters his mother and seats her on the backseat, but Onizuka breaks the statue and easily keeps up with them by running while joyfully exchanging greetings with Mirai's mother. They abruptly turn a corner and his mother almost dies by an oncoming truck, but Onizuka saves her and dusts off his clothes before going for another date with another classmate's mother as a home visit. His mother compliments him for having such a different perspective as a teacher, but Mirai refuses to believe that he isn't a weird pervert and angrily runs away. While they're playing an old game called Kokiri-san in class, Onizuka finds out about some people's crushes and they're all having fun when Mirai pipes up that no one plays that game anymore. So he asks it if Mirai has stinky feet, for which it answers yes. Then he asks it if he's got crotch rot, to which it answers yes as well. To deal a final blow, he asks it who in the class has a mother complex, for which it answers Mirai again. Mirai tries to attack Onizuka as they all start laughing at him when someone adds that it's because Mirai's mother is a total babe. As the bell rings, Onizuka gets ready to leave and says that he's got a private meeting set up, which is why he can't leave. Once school ends, Mirai angrily heads back home and finds his mother wearing fancy clothes again. She says that she's going bowling and tells them to come with her. Mirai tries to initially decline the offer, but when his 2 friends happily hold her bag for her, decides to go as well. When they reach the bowling arena, they don't go inside at once and she tells them that she's waiting for someone that turns out to be Onizuka, who cheerily goes up to meet her but wrinkles his face in disgust after seeing that Mirai is with them as well. Later, as they get sorted into 2 teams with Onizuka and Mirai in one and the remaining 3 in the other, they both try to continuously taunt and look down on each other but end up performing well just as his mother receives a call for some urgent work and leaves, asking Onizuka to take care of the children. The 2 start fighting each other with bowling balls before Onizuka sticks his hands to 2 of them, takes his friend and runs away. As they're walking through a dark street, his friends worryingly ask him if they went too far, but he waves them off before annoyingly kicking a car's tires for being parked on the wrong side. Suddenly, a gang of Yakuza corner them and tell him to pay up for the damage he did to the car, but he tells them that he didn't do anything and tries to push past them, but one of them falls to the ground and cries out in fake pain. They snidely tell them to pay up 1 million yen for the car and medical damages to their friend and say that if they don't, they'll take them to their base and beat them all up to get the money. Suddenly, Onizuka arrives from behind and starts smoking a cigarette before telling them that he's head of the Santama group. Relieved, Mirai and his friends ask him to help them, but he says that he's Doraemon from the Santama group and says that he doesn't know them. The thugs lock the 3 boys in sleeping bags and hang them down from a tree before starting to wonder what sort of punishment they should give to them before Onizuka suggests having them bungee jump from a bridge, to which they enthusiastically agree. As Mirai shakily jumps from the bridge, he hangs suspended in the air by the paper-thin rope they gave him, and Onizuka pulls him up before defeating all the thugs other than one who rushes away in a van. He tells the boys to get on the car they'd kicked the tire of and they pursue the thug before Mirai finds a photo in the dashboard and finds out that it's the cresta belonging to the vice principal. The next day, as the vice principal happily finds out that his cresta is back, he runs forward to see it but finds that it's been completely wrecked before 2 police officers grab him by the arms and take him in for questioning regarding last night's car chase. As the PE teacher, Fukuroda is thirstily ogling at the girls running laps around the school grounds in their skimpy uniform. A voice suddenly tells him to dodge as a rocket hits him straight on his nose. Realizing what's happened, Mirai quickly flee from the area as Onizuka confusedly asks them what's happened. After seeing Fukuroda's angry expression and catching on, he also runs away into the school. Once the period has ended, he madly goes through the school, looking for Onizuka, and says that he's going to make sure he can't do this sort of trick during class ever again while the vice principal tries to desperately stop him. When he enters Onizuka's class, he sees him kick off a block of wood and immediately softens up before suggesting a swimming competition. Later, as he's admiringly flexing his almost bare body in front of the swimming pool, he notices Onizuka carelessly eating lunch without any worry. Sensing the opportunity, Mirai and his friends begin a betting pool on who'll win, and both Onizuka and Fukuroda bet their entire wallets on themselves. Once the race begins, Fukuroda inwardly compliments himself for being able to so easily beat Onizuka, but just as he's about to reach the finish line, Onizuka gets out before him. Shocked, he tries to blame it on doping and has 2 more races but loses both of them as well before dejectedly going back to the staff room, where he runs into a girl near the lockers. As she hurriedly walks away from him, she runs into Onizuka, who admiringly looks at her large breast size before asking her name, which she says is Tomoko. She runs back to Miyabi, a girl who's always despised Onizuka, and tells her that she's successfully hidden the bag filled with female underwear in his locker. The next day, the girls go to the vice principal and complain that their underwear has been stolen. Enraged by such acts happening in the school, he announces a surprise locker test for everyone in the school, so the teachers spend the rest of the day looking for the bag but come up empty-handed, so she suggests that they also check the teachers' lockers. Seeing sense in her words, the vice principal starts with Onizuka, who stops them from opening his locker and begs them to stop, but Fukuroda and the vice principal only become more suspicious, so he holds him back by his arms and enthusiastically tells the vice principal to open it, determined to shame Onizuka for beating him in the race. But when they enthusiastically open the door, Miyabi joyfully expects it to hold the bag, but it's only filled to the brim with his own dirty laundry. Disappointed, Fukuroda tells him that teachers should serve as role models for their students and always maintain a dignified persona, and opens his locker to show him an example of cleanliness before despairingly seeing the bag of underwear in it. Shocked, he tries to deliberately stop them from opening it and accidentally crushes it, so he says that his strong upper musculature damaged it, which is why he should dispose of it. He nervously tries to take it outside by carrying it over his shoulders, but the door accidentally opens and spills the bag in front of them. Later on, it was confirmed that he wasn't the thief. However, this entire fiasco had spread a bad image of the teachers. Meanwhile, Miyabi and her friends angrily throw Tomoko into the swimming pool for hiding the bag in the wrong locker and tell her to never speak to them again before walking away, leaving her completely drenched in the pool. Tomoko slowly gets out of the pool and sits on the ground for a while. She starts remembering Miyabi's harsh words and slowly starts to cry. The next day, Miyabi's friends tell her that they've submitted her name along with themselves to a beauty competition and ask her to participate, so she reluctantly agrees. As Tomoko enters the hallway, she happily greets them like she usually does, but they ignore her and walk away. As she sits down in class, she sees that an ice cream cone was put on her seat and has spoiled all her clothes. When Fuyatsuki arrives, all the students get up, but she doesn't sit down because of her spoilt seat, so Fuyatsuki comes over to her and realizes what's happened. She later goes to Onizuka and tells him about it. In his class, he sees that Tomoko has angled her chair away from the others and faces a corner now where she's being pelted by the other girls. He angrily walks toward one of them before slamming his hand down and saying he wants to make a soda rocket. Later, as she's sitting in the park alone, playing make-believe, she suddenly remembers the time she spent with Miyabi and starts to cry, but Onizuka joins her and starts playing as well, after which she takes him to her parents' restaurant, where her father graciously offers him ramen and asks if Tomoko studies alright since she can be a klutz. Later, she takes him to his room and tells him that she's always been slow and bad at things. Her breasts grew really big in 4th grade. She was always bad at school and only messed things up at her parents' restaurant. Compare her to the beautiful, athletic Miyabi, and she's nothing. But Onizuka tells her that's not true, since she also has a lot of things she's better than Miyabi at, and has her own personality. He gives her a card and tells her to stand at a place and clearly hold it in her hands while wearing a bunny girl costume, to which she reluctantly agrees. The next day, she goes to the station where a lot of media scouts try to get her to come with them, but remembering Onizuka's words, she doesn't go with any of them until someone mentions his name and takes her to a car where an artist dresses her in a PE suit and applies makeup on her face. Meanwhile, Miyabi goes to the hall for the beauty contest, in which only she was admitted before her entire class arrives behind her and say that there was a note from Onizuka telling them to come to this hall immediately, which they did. Onizuka arrives behind them and seems to be waiting for someone just as Tomoko gets off a car, and he tells her and to all the students that she's going to be entering the beauty contest. When a girl tells him that Miyabi is entering as well, he enthusiastically says that means they'll both be rivals, as Miyabi looks at her in surprise. And that wraps up another thrilling recap. But the adventure doesn't end here. Prepare to be shocked by our second recap's unexpected plot twists and witness the evolution of your favorite characters. Subscribe to our channel if you want more twists, turns, and heart-pounding stories. Stay tuned for our next recap.